My name is Celine Hart, and until last autumn I thought I understood loyalty. I grew up in Willow Run, a rural pocket of northern Washington where the river cuts through pine forests like a silver scar. Folks here don't lock their doors. People wave at passing trucks, even if they don't recognize them. And when the river floods every few years, everyone shows up with buckets, shovels, and cheap thermoses full of coffee that tastes like burnt hope. It's a stubborn, tender kind of place, one that raised me like a second mother. That's why the betrayal felt like a punch straight to the ribs. I was 29 when everything started. I'd moved back home after spending years doing environmental outreach in different states, tribal water access projects, habitat restoration, climate advocacy. I came home believing my experience could help our small town fight off whatever threat might stumble in next. Turns out the threat wasn't stumbling, it was marching. A company called Bright Source Energy, a glossy corporation with two perfect pamphlets, proposed a pipeline that would cut straight through Willow Run and cross under the Sable River, our river, the artery of our land, the place where families fish, where kids learn to skip stones, where my father taught me to listen for salmon as if they were whispers under the current. Bright Source swore it was safe. Minimal disruption, they said. Boosted jobs, they promised. Right. And wolves knit sweaters. Naturally, the community pushed back. And leading that push was Eli Warren, a man everyone trusted. Eli was the kind of organizer who knew everyone's birthdays and preferred snacks. He talked like a preacher, soft, easy, like honey dripping off warm bread. When he spoke about protecting our river, you felt something swell in your chest, like hope had breath again. He asked me to join the organizing team. I said yes without thinking. For weeks, we hosted community circles in barns and under willow trees, gathering testimonies from ranchers, biologists, tribal members, and anyone who had ever loved the sound of moving water. I compiled environmental impact reports. I mapped wildlife corridors and documented native grasses Bright Source's pipeline would destroy. Together, at least I thought together, we shaped a plan to fight back through every legal, public, and emotional channel we had. But something was off. At first, I wrote it off as stress, but the signs grew harder to ignore. Permits we were preparing to contest mysteriously expired before we could file objections. Public hearing dates shifted at the last second, always when Eli was the only one in the loop. Documents I sent to him, carefully summarized groundwater data, fish spawning records, safety violations from other Bright Source pipelines, somehow never made it into our presentations. Technical issues, he'd say with that same warm smile. Then came the night that cracked everything open. We were in the old community center, the one that still smelled like gym socks from the 80s, no matter how much lemon cleaner you used. Eli was inside preparing for a strategy meeting, and I'd stopped by early to set up chairs. His laptop was open on the front table. I wasn't snooping. Really. I just saw my name on the screen and froze. It was an email draft addressed to someone at Bright Source. And it said, word for word, Celine is becoming a problem. She's gathering data that could stall permitting for months. I'm redirecting her assignments to prevent delays. The next report should neutralize her position in the group entirely. My blood went cold. My ears rang. I felt like I'd swallowed a fistful of river stones. I scrolled, breath shaking. More emails, weeks of them. Payment receipts, strategy instructions, Eli feeding Bright Source our plans, sabotaging hearings, burying key testimony, delaying community petitions. 20 years of trust, traded for corporate money. I remember hearing my own voice, tiny and thin. No, he wouldn't, but he did. And suddenly, everything made sense. The missing documents, the shifting dates, the way our strongest arguments never saw the light of day. Footsteps echoed down the hall. Eli. I scrambled back from the laptop, almost knocking over a folding chair. He walked in with that familiar, warm, practiced smile. The smile of a man who could convince you the sky was lavender if he tried hard enough. "Celine," he said, "you're early." My heart hammered so loudly I thought he might hear it. "Yeah," I managed. "Wanted to finish setting up." His eyes lingered on me a moment too long. Curious, calculating. Then he nodded, but in that moment, I knew. He knew I knew. I could read it on his face like a reflection in river water, distorted, rippling, undeniable. When the meeting started, I could barely hear anything. My mind was vibrating with panic, rage, betrayal. Every cell in my body screamed to expose him right there, in front of everyone. But then a chilling realization slid through me. He had already positioned me as a problem. If I confronted him without proof, if he flipped the narrative first, I'd look like the unhinged activist, the emotional troublemaker. Bright Source would weaponize my anger. They'd label me a liar, a conspiracy theorist, a threat to progress. I'd lose. The river would lose. Everyone would lose. So I sat quietly, nails digging into my palms until they left tiny half-moon dents. And I made a choice. If Eli thought he could bury the truth, he didn't know me at all. Because the river raised me, and the river does not go down without pulling something with it. My revenge wouldn't be petty. It would be precise. But before I could act, before I could gather evidence or warn the community, something happened at the end of that meeting that made the hair on my neck stand up. Eli announced a new plan, one that would completely dismantle months of work, and every person in the room looked at him with absolute trust. Then his gaze slid toward me, and he said, "Celine, I'll need you to handle a special task for Bright Source's next public forum." I hadn't told anyone what I'd seen. He was testing me, or worse, setting me up. My stomach dropped. The room blurred. And all I could think was, he's already several moves ahead, and if I make one wrong step, he'll bury me next. Eli's words echoed in my mind long after the meeting ended. A special task. That was how traitors talked when they wanted to tighten the leash. People drifted out of the community center in small clusters, laughing lightly, boots scraping against gravel. The night air was cold enough to sting my cheeks, but my insides felt hotter than wildfire. I walked home fast, chest tight, replaying that email again and again. My feet crunched through fallen pine needles, and every sound behind me made me flinch. By the time I reached my cabin, I felt wrung out, like someone had twisted my spirit until no breath remained. I collapsed onto the couch without turning on the lights. The river outside hummed in the dark, steady, ancient, patient. It always calmed me. But tonight, the sound cut like a blade. My mind kept whispering the same question. What if he destroys everything before I can stop him? I didn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and started planning. First, I needed proof. Real proof. Not accidental glimpses of open emails, not assumptions. Hard evidence gathered carefully and silently. Second, I needed allies, people Eli couldn't manipulate. Third, I needed a strategy that Bright Source couldn't predict. But each idea collided with one truth. If I made even a small mistake, Eli would bury me first. The next morning, Willow Run felt different. Or maybe I had changed. People waved from their porches. Dogs barked. The river glittered like it always did. But a thin, invisible film seemed to stretch across the town. Something I couldn't unsee now. A layer of corruption hiding in familiar faces. I headed to meet Marcy Caldwell, one of our volunteer biologists. She lived in a converted airstream tucked between cedar trees. When I knocked, she squinted through her screen door, eyes ringed with insomnia. "Did you hear?" she asked. "Hear what?" "Eli wants us to pause all environmental sampling until next month. Says it's to streamline the messaging." My breath caught. He was already tightening the net. I shook my head. "We can't pause. Data's the only thing keeping this fight grounded." Marcy cracked a humorless smile. Tell that to him. He said you agreed with the new approach. My stomach twisted. He was using my name as a weapon. Marcy, I didn't agree to anything. She froze, eyes narrowing. Then what game is he playing? The same question I'd been asking myself since last night. Before I could answer, she stepped aside and motioned me in. You better tell me what's going on. All of it. So I did. I told her everything. The emails, the sabotage, the corporate money. I expected shock, maybe anger. But what I saw first was relief, which terrified me. I knew something was off, she whispered. Every time I submitted a report, Eli told me it wasn't necessary or too confusing. Told me to wait. I thought... Her voice cracked. I thought I was the problem. You're not, I said firmly. We sat at her tiny metal table while sunlight flickered through the leaves, making patterns on her stainless steel counter. I pulled out a notebook and started sketching the framework of a new plan. Gather testimonies privately. Copy all reports to an external drive Eli couldn't access. Create a parallel channel for data, anonymous, secure. Map every corporate connection Eli had. Find someone outside the town who could verify everything. Marcy leaned over my shoulder. Who would that be? Scientists, journalists, legal advisors? People BrightSource can't threaten. She nodded slowly. You're building a case. I'm building a shield, I corrected. Before I strike, my phone buzzed. A text from Eli. Celine, remember the task we discussed. Meet me at the BrightSource consultation office at 3 p.m. Important. A chill rolled down my spine. Marcy read the text over my shoulder and whispered, Don't go. I have to, I said. If I disappear, he'll know I'm onto him. If I go, I might find out what he's planning. She grabbed my arm. Then don't go alone. I won't, I said, though I had no idea who would go with me, but fate had an unexpected answer. As I stepped out of the airstream, someone waited by the cedar trees. A tall, weathered man with a ranger's stoic posture and eyes like worn gravel. Jonas Crowell, a retired forest ranger I'd known since childhood. He used to patrol the river trail and once rescued me from a wasp swarm when I was 8. Morning, Celine, he said. Got a minute? I blinked. Jonas? What are you doing here? Looking for you. His gaze sharpened. Heard something's wrong. My pulse jumped. Who told you? Town talks. Mist moves faster than truth, but sometimes they arrive together. He crossed his arms. I've seen company men before. They smile wide, grip firm, and hide knives behind their teeth. Eli's got the same scent. I swallowed. So you believe me? I don't need to believe, he said. I've got eyes. For the first time since the betrayal, I felt the ground steady beneath me. Jonas? I said quietly. I think he's setting me up. He nodded once. Then you're not going alone. A gust of wind swept through the trees, scattering needles across the dirt like tiny warning signs. Be careful, Marcy said behind me. I took a breath. At 2:50 p.m., Jonas and I pulled into the BrightSource consultation office, a sleek, prefab building that looked painfully out of place among the pine trees. The glass panels reflected the sky too perfectly, like they were trying to imitate nature rather than coexist with it. Inside, the air smelled like lemon disinfectant and expensive lies. A receptionist gave us a frozen corporate smile. Eli is expecting you, Celine. You can go right in. Only me, not Jonas. Jonas put a hand on my shoulder. You shout if anything feels wrong. I nodded and stepped into the meeting room. Eli was waiting, leaning casually against the table, sleeves rolled up, smile easy and confident, as if last night never happened. Celine, he said warmly, glad you came. My jaw clenched. What is this task you want me involved in? He handed me a folder. Thick, too thick. When I flipped it open, my heart lurched. Inside were documents with my name plastered across them. Fake reports, skewed data, statements I never wrote. all of them implying I had misled the community, that I was the reason hearings had stalled. A manufactured scandal, perfectly crafted. My voice cracked. What is this? Eli stepped closer, lowering his voice. A future problem, he said softly. Unless you cooperate. My blood turned to ice. He tapped the folder. You help Bright Source present at the forum next week? And none of this needs to reach the board. Or the public. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd pass out. He wasn't just sabotaging us. He was framing me. I stared at the documents, pulse roaring in my ears, and then looked up at him. You won't get away with this, I whispered. Eli smiled. I already have. Before I could answer, the door behind me clicked shut, locked, and Eli's expression shifted into something darker, something dangerous. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Eli stood between me and the locked door, hands folded loosely in front of him, as if he were hosting a casual lunch and not holding my future hostage. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above us, casting sharp shadows on the sleek conference table. Why are you doing this? I whispered. He tilted his head slightly, the smile fading into something colder. You're asking the wrong question, Celine. His voice softened to a patronizing purr. The real question is why you thought you could win. Anger sparked hot in my chest, but fear wrapped around it like ice. I forced myself not to look away. I'm not here to win, I said. I'm here to protect the river. Exactly, he replied. And that's the problem. He stepped closer, close enough for me to see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, lines carved from years of pretending to care. He lowered his voice, so quiet it felt like the room itself leaned in to hear it. You're too good at what you do, Celine. Too convincing. Too thorough. If Bright Source lets you keep going, you'll stall the project until it dies on the vine. I can't let that happen. Not after everything I've invested. I swallowed. They're paying you. He didn't flinch. Generously. My stomach rolled. And the town? I asked. The people who trusted you? For the first time, his smile flickered. Not with guilt, but annoyance. The town will survive, he said dismissively. Jobs will come. Infrastructure will come. People adapt. And if a few activists get bruised in the process, that's the price of progress. I felt my nails dig crescents into my palms. You're betraying your own home. No, he said calmly. I'm securing my future. And if you're smart, you'll secure yours. He tapped the folder again. The fake scandal with my name plastered across it like a brand burned into skin. Agree to speak at the forum and validate Bright Source's safety claims, he said. In return, I'll bury this. No one will know what you've... He smirked. Done. A tremor ran through me, but I forced my expression steady. And if I don't agree? His eyes hardened to polished steel. Then I'll release everything. The board will see you as a liability. The community... Well, you know how quickly trust turns to suspicion. He stepped even closer, and I'll make sure suspicion becomes certainty. I felt the walls closing in. My breath came shallow. But somewhere deep inside, something refused to bow. A river doesn't surrender. It carves new paths. I need time, I lied, to think. Eli's eyes narrowed. How much time? A day. He studied me, searching for cracks. I kept my face as blank as cold stone. Finally, he exhaled. Fine, one day. But don't mistake this for leniency. He walked to the door, unlocked it, and pulled it open. Think carefully, Celine, he said, his voice now smooth again. You're standing at a crossroads. Choose the wrong path, and you drown. I stepped past him without responding, feeling his eyes burn into my back. When I reached the lobby, Jonas stood up so fast his chair squeaked across the tile. You okay? He asked, voice low. His hand hovered near the pocket where he kept his old Ranger radio, as if expecting me to say I needed help. Not here, I whispered. We walked silently to the truck. Once the doors shut, I felt the tight coil inside me finally snap. He's framing me. I said, my voice shaking with fury. He's built documents, data, statements, everything he needs to destroy me. Jonas's jaw flexed. That's what I was afraid of. He wants me to speak at the forum and back BrightSource's claims, I added. Otherwise he'll spread everything. Jonas let out a long, steady breath, a sound halfway between a sigh and a growl. He's underestimating you, he said. Maybe. But right now it didn't feel that way. We drove to a turnout near the river, a quiet patch where the air smelled like pine tar and cold water. Jonas leaned against a boulder while I paced, hands trembling despite my best attempts to stay calm. I have one day, I muttered. One day to gather evidence, protect Marcy, warn the others, and figure out how to counter whatever he plans to release. Jonas scratched his beard. What about the press? I can't go to them without proof. If Eli gets ahead of me, my reputation's gone. What about those scientists you mentioned to Marcy? They can help, but only after I have something solid. Jonas stared out toward the river. Then we start tonight. I stopped pacing. Tonight? He nodded. If Eli's been coordinating with BrightSource, there'll be trails. Phones, emails, meeting logs. Company cars coming in and out at odd hours. Someone keeping records. Companies are sloppy when they think no one's watching. He met my eyes. And you've got one advantage. What's that? You know the land better than he does. Better than all of them. I breathed in the cold air, the scent of river moss settling deep in my lungs. Jonas was right. This land wasn't just home. It was part of me. Every trail, every bend in the water, every blind spot Eli assumed no one could see. Okay, I said. Tonight we look. Jonas nodded once, sharp and certain. Good. But as we walked back toward the truck, something glinted from the bushes near the turnout. A tiny flash of glass catching sunlight. Jonas noticed it too. He crouched, parted the branches, and cursed under his breath. It was a camera, a small, camouflaged trail camera. New, high resolution. Definitely not the kind the Forest Service used. Jonas plucked it from the branches, turning it over slowly in his hand. This wasn't here last week, he muttered. A sick feeling knotted in my stomach. Is it watching wildlife? I asked, though I already sensed the truth. Jonas shook his head. Pointed at the turnout, at the road, at anyone who stops here. My mouth went dry. You think Eli? Jonas's jaw tightened. If he's tracking your movements, this is how he'd do it. A cold realization slid down my spine. Eli didn't just plan to frame me. He planned to monitor me. Jonas slipped the camera into his jacket. We need to check other spots. Anywhere you've met people. Anywhere he might suspect you're planning something. The wind picked up, rippling the water until it shimmered like broken glass. Celine, Jonas said quietly, you're not just up against a corrupt organizer anymore. I turned toward him. You're up against a man who thinks he's already won, he finished. My heart hammered, but anger finally pushed past the fear. Then it's time, I said, to prove him wrong. But before either of us could move, Jonas's phone buzzed. He frowned, checked the screen, and his eyes went wide. He held it out to me. A breaking news alert glowed across the display. BrightSource Energy announces major public update regarding community opposition tomorrow morning. My stomach plunged. Tomorrow, before my one day was even up. The moment I saw the breaking news alert, my pulse spiked. BrightSource wasn't waiting. They were moving early, before I could gather evidence, before I could defend myself, before I could breathe. Jonas lowered the phone slowly. They're accelerating the narrative. It's a preemptive strike, I said, throat tight. They're going to twist the story before I can even tell it. Then we move faster. Jonas straightened. Tonight just became critical. The sun dipped behind the treetops, bleeding gold into the water. Evening shadows stretched long across the riverbank, like fingers reaching for something that wasn't theirs. I stared at the river. Jonas, if they're already going public tomorrow morning, what if they announce something about me? He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. I swallowed the rising panic. We need evidence. Solid, irrefutable, documented evidence. And we need it before dawn. Jonas nodded. Then we start with Eli. By the time we got back into town, the streetlights were flickering on, one by one. Willow Run looked peaceful, almost sleepy. The kind of quiet that makes you forget how quickly it can turn violent when truth is threatened. We parked a block away from the community centre, where Eli kept his outreach office. The building was dark, except for a thin glow under the door. "He's here," Jonas murmured. "Working late," I said. "Or covering his tracks." Jonas reached into the glove box and pulled out a small flashlight. "You stay out here. I'll do a sweep around the building." "No," I said sharply. "I'm going too." "Celine, I'm done being sidelined." My voice cracked with a mix of fear and fury. He already stole months of work. I won't let him steal the truth. Jonas studied my face, then nodded. We moved quietly along the side of the building, staying close to the shadows. Gravel shifted under our boots. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, too calm for the storm rising inside me. At the back of the building, a side window glowed faintly. Eli's voice drifted through the crack in the glass. "We're ahead of schedule," he was saying. "The board's announcement tomorrow will corner her before she can make a move." My breath hitched. A second voice, low, unfamiliar. "And if she fights back?" Eli laughed softly. "She won't have the resources. And if she tries, we'll drown her in paperwork. We already built the narrative. Proof doesn't matter when perception is faster." I felt my nails press into my palms again. Jonas mouthed, "Record." I nodded, pulled out my phone and hit the audio recorder. Inside, Eli continued, "Tomorrow's update will shake the community. Once they doubt her, she's done. And once she's done, the river fight collapses." My heart hammered. The other man asked, "What about the data she collected?" "Handled," Eli replied. "Everything important has been intercepted or buried, and we planted enough inconsistencies to make her look incompetent." Rage swelled in my chest, hot, thick, blinding. Jonas put a steadying hand on my arm. "Keep recording," he mouthed. But before I could take another breath, something inside the office clattered, papers slapping the floor. "Hold on," Eli said, footsteps moving closer. Jonas tugged my sleeve. "We need to go. Now." We slid back into the shadows, just as the side door creaked open. Eli stepped outside, scanning the darkness. His silhouette was stark against the dim light behind him. Jonas pulled me behind a parked truck, both of us holding our breath. Eli's voice drifted out, low and irritated. "Thought I heard something." A beat of silence. Then another. He lingered for a moment too long, as if he knew the darkness was hiding something. Someone. Finally, he went back inside, the door clicking shut behind him. Jonas exhaled slowly. "That was close." "We got enough?" I whispered. "We got something important," he said, "but we need more." I checked the recording. Crystal clear. Eli's voice unmistakable. My heart lifted, but only for a second, because a single recording wouldn't be enough to contradict whatever Bright Source planned for tomorrow. They had money, lawyers, PR teams ready to spin the truth like cotton candy. We needed something bigger, something devastating. Jonas rubbed his jaw. "We should check the Bright Source transport hub. Trucks have been coming in at odd hours. If they're rushing construction prep, the logs should show it." I hesitated. "That place is guarded." "Yes," Jonas said, "but you know the land." He wasn't wrong. Growing up, I'd spent half my childhood wandering the woods and riverbanks around Willow Run. I knew paths that weren't on any map, even the ones the pipeline survey teams didn't see. We drove out toward the edge of town, where the dirt roads turned narrow and the sky opened wide. The Bright Source hub sat at the base of a ridge, floodlights glowing harshly against the forest, trucks idling like beasts waiting to move. Jonas parked the truck a half-mile back, behind a stand of firs. "We walk from here," he said. Branches snapped underfoot as we moved through the trees. The night air smelled like sap and tension. Every step made my pulse throb harder. After 10 minutes, the lights came into view. Too bright, too white, glaring like an artificial sun. Men in reflective vests paced around, checking clipboards. Jonas crouched beside me. That shed. He pointed to a small metal structure near the fence. Looks like a logging unit. Could be where they store entry logs or shipment records. I squinted. He was right. The door had a keypad, but the vents near the roof were wide open. "If we get the logs," I whispered, "we can show they're preparing illegally early." "Exactly." We waited until one of the guards disappeared behind a truck, then crossed the clearing in a low sprint. My heart pounded against my ribs like it wanted to escape. We ducked behind the shed. Jonas cupped his hands and nodded. "Boost you up." I stepped onto his palms, lifted myself toward the vent, and pushed gently. It slid open with a soft click. Inside, I saw metal shelves, binders, and a computer monitor still glowing. Perfect. I slid through feet first, landing awkwardly but quietly on the floor. I signaled Jonas with 2 taps. "I'm in." The shed smelled like dust and motor oil. Papers cluttered the desk. I scanned quickly. Shipment logs, vehicle entry times, pipeline component deliveries, dated for next week. But then, my blood froze. A folder labeled Community Response Intervention. Hart, Celine. I grabbed it, flipped it open. Pages of strategies, talking points, psychological profiles. My name everywhere. They had mapped my weaknesses, my patterns, my education, my past activism. They knew everything, and worse. The final page listed tomorrow's update, and it wasn't just PR. It was a planned legal injunction naming me as an obstructionist under state infrastructure statutes. They were going to criminalize me, not just silence me, remove me. My vision blurred, my stomach lurched. I fumbled for my phone to take photos, but before I could, the shed door handle rattled sharply from outside. A man's voice growled, "Why the hell is the vent open?" Footsteps, heavy, getting closer. I snapped my head toward the back of the shed. No exit. The door rattled again. Then, a second voice shouted, "Hey, someone's inside!" My heart slammed into my throat. They found me. My heart slammed against my ribs. The shed door jolted again, harder this time. Tools rattled on the walls. Footsteps pounded outside. Multiple men, not just one. "Whoever's in there, come out now!" I froze. My mind raced through possibilities. Fight, hide, run. But the shed was small, too small, and the only exit was the door they were about to break open. The floor vibrated under their boots. "Think, Celine, think." I scanned the room frantically, my eyes darting across shelves, cabinets, stacks of binders, until they landed on something in the corner. A service hatch. A tiny square panel near the floor, barely noticeable beneath a clutter of boxes. My pulse jumped. If it led anywhere at all, it might be my only chance. I rushed toward it and pulled the boxes aside, fingers trembling. I gripped the edge of the panel and yanked. It resisted. Old metal swollen from years of humidity. But I pulled harder, bracing my foot against the wall. The door outside shook under a heavy blow. The hatch snapped open. A narrow crawl space, barely wide enough for me to fit, but wide enough. I didn't think. I dove in, pulling the panel closed behind me, just as a metallic crash tore through the shed. The door burst open. I held my breath, smothered by darkness, dust scraping my throat. The crawl space was tight, coffin-like. I could hear boots spreading out across the shed floor, voices sharp and angry. "She's not here." "Someone was. Check the shelves." "Vents open. Someone climbed in." "No way she got far." Someone slammed a binder down. My whole body flinched. I crawled slowly, inch by inch, the space barely giving me enough room to move. My palms scraped against rust. My knees burned. Sweat dripped down my spine. Behind me, someone kicked the vent. Looks like whoever it was fell out or ran. Fan out around the building. I'll check the perimeter. Boots stormed out. I kept crawling. The space sloped downward, then curved sharply. I followed its twist until a faint sliver of nightlight appeared ahead. Another grate. Fresh air seeped through it, cool and sharp like river water. I peered through the slats. Trees, darkness, no guards. I pushed my shoulder against the vent. It groaned quietly but didn't budge. I pushed harder. Still stuck. I pressed again, this time bracing my feet against the opposite wall and straining with every ounce of strength left in my body. The vent popped free. I slid out into the dirt and leaves, catching myself with my palms. Night swallowed me whole. For one moment I stayed there, gasping quietly, feeling the earth under me like an anchor. Then, a hand gripped my arm. I jumped so violently I almost screamed, but a familiar voice hissed, "Celine, quiet." Jonas. Relief slammed into me so hard my knees buckled. He steadied me quickly. "What happened?" he whispered. "They found me. They broke into the shed. I got out through a crawl space." Jonas exhaled, jaw tight. "We need to move. Now." We slipped deeper into the trees, sticking to the shadows. Only when we were a safe distance away did I finally breathe, without choking on fear. Jonas stopped beside a dead log. "Did you get anything?" I nodded and pulled out the folder I'd grabbed. Community Response Intervention. Hart, Celine, still clutched to my chest like a lifeline. "They mapped my whole life," I whispered. "Every weakness, every move I might make. And tomorrow morning, they're filing a legal injunction against me." Jonas took the folder, flipping through with careful hands. His brows furrowed deeper with each page. "This is worse than I expected," he said quietly. "This isn't just reputation damage. They want you silenced legally, or gone entirely." He didn't deny it. That terrified me more than anything. "We need multiple copies," he said. "Scan this. Back it up. Send parts to trusted people." I shook my head. "Not through email. They're tracking everything." Jonas rested a hand on my shoulder. "Then we go analog. Hard drives, photocopies, secure drop-offs, and the recording," I said, pulling out my phone. "Eli admitting they plan to manipulate public perception. That's strong." "Strong," Jonas agreed, "but not bulletproof. They'll call it edited, misinterpreted, out of context." I knew he was right. BrightSource had a machine behind them. I had a growing pile of fragile truths and a clock that was ticking down fast. Jonas looked around the dark forest. "We need someone outside this town. Someone with reach, influence. Someone who can verify all of this before the announcement tomorrow." I swallowed. "A journalist. Or a legal organization," Jonas added. "Someone who knows infrastructure law." But who? I knew activists, organizers, environmental scientists, but no one with the kind of immediate clout that could counter a corporation's morning announcement. Then a thought hit me. "Marcy," I whispered. "Her cousin works with the Northwest Environmental Law Center. He handles cases exactly like this." Jonas nodded. "Call her." We moved farther into the forest until we were sure we weren't being followed. I took a shaky breath and dialed Marcy's number. She picked up on the first ring. "Celine, thank God. Jonas just texted saying he couldn't reach you. Are you okay?" "Not really," I said, "but I'm alive. Listen, I found something. Something huge." I explained everything. The shed, the logs, the folder, the planned injunction. Marcy swore under her breath. "This is criminal. I'll get my cousin on a secure line. He's in Seattle. If we can get the documents to him, he can file an emergency response." "When?" I whispered. "Tonight?" A breath of hope flickered in my chest. But Jonas held up a hand, signaling for silence. I stopped talking. He pointed deeper into the trees. Lights. Flickering. Moving. Search beams. "They're looking for you," Jonas whispered. "And they're too close." My pulse jumped. We have to go, I whispered. Jonas nodded. There's an old ranger station half a mile west. No one uses it anymore. We can regroup there. We started moving fast, weaving between trees. Branches snapped behind us. Voices rose, distant but growing sharper. Move! Jonas hissed. We ran. Through thorns, over roots, across uneven ground. My lungs burned. My legs shook. But fear powered every step. The lights behind us grew brighter. Branches whipped at my arms. Leaves blurred around me. Then, the forest opened suddenly into a clearing. The abandoned ranger station stood on the far side. Dark, quiet, small. We sprinted toward it. And that's when the voice boomed across the clearing. Stop! We see you! Do not move! Bright Source Security. They weren't guessing anymore. They knew exactly who they were chasing. Jonas grabbed my arm. Celine, run! But as we lunged forward, a spotlight snapped on, engulfing us in blinding white. There was nowhere left to hide. The spotlight hit like a punch. White, blinding. A heatless sun burning down on us. Jonas instinctively threw an arm in front of me, shielding my eyes. The clearing around us glowed under the floodlight. Trees silhouetted starkly, shadows stretching like claws across the ground. Voices erupted. There, by the station. 2 of them. Move, move! Flashlights bobbed through the trees. Branches snapped as guards broke through the underbrush. The clearing was no longer quiet. It pulsed with footsteps, shouts, radios crackling. Jonas leaned close, voice sharp and low. We can't outrun them in open ground. No, I whispered. We can't. Then what? The ranger station stood only 20 yards away. Old, wooden, leaning slightly under its own age. A single dark window stared back at us like a warning. It had 1 door, 1 entrance, 1 exit. A trap. But staying where we were was worse. They're circling, Jonas hissed. And he was right. Shadows moved along the edges of the clearing, cutting off escape routes one by one. My mind raced. There had to be something. Some angle, some opening, some forgotten detail from childhood hikes that could save us. We crept backward toward the station. The spotlight followed. Stop moving! A voice barked. Jonas whispered. When I say run, go. No, I hissed. If you distract them, they'll... Celine, he said, gripping my shoulder. You're the one with the evidence. They want you, not me. I'm not letting them take you. I shook my head, panic rising. Jonas, no! But I couldn't finish, because at that moment, a second light switched on. Another blazing spotlight from behind us. We were caught between 2 suns. Jonas cursed under his breath. They set a perimeter. Hands up! Someone shouted. We didn't have a choice. Slowly, Jonas raised his hands. I followed, the cold air stinging my palms. Bright Source guards stepped into the clearing. 6 men in reflective vests and tactical boots, faces hard, movements rehearsed. One of them spoke into his radio. We have visual on Hart. Advise. Hart, my name. They weren't even pretending this was routine anymore. Another guard approached, hand hovering over his holster. You're trespassing on private property. This is public forest, Jonas snapped. Access restricted due to ongoing assessment. The guard replied flatly. You're interfering with corporate operations. Corporate operations, right. Like surveillance, like framing, like hunting down anyone who threatened the pipeline. The guard turned to me. You need to come with us. My pulse quickened. On what grounds? Investigation. For what? I demanded. You know exactly for what, he said coldly. I felt my throat tighten. They were preparing the narrative, assembling the trap, closing in. Jonas stepped in front of me. She's not going anywhere with you without legal counsel. The guard smirked. Does it look like you're in a position to negotiate? I clenched my teeth. I have rights. He stepped closer. And we'll make sure we handle them appropriately. Anger sparked inside me, but fear drowned it almost instantly. They were going to detain me, Take me somewhere out of sight. Separate me from Jonas. Seize the folder. Seize my phone. Erase everything. And then tomorrow morning, Bright Source would announce their injunction, and there would be no Celine Hart left to defend herself. I felt the clearing tilt around me. No, not like this. Before I could react, one of the guards pulled out zip-tie restraints and moved toward me. Jonas lunged. Not with violence, he wasn't reckless, but with intention. He stepped between the guard and me, hands raised in a commanding gesture. Back off. She hasn't committed a crime. If you want answers, talk to the sheriff. This isn't your jurisdiction. The guard stiffened. Sir, step aside. No. The standoff hardened. The guards shifted, adjusted flashlights, tightened grips on gear. Jonas leaned toward me and whispered, barely audible, "When I push you, run for the station." My heart lurched. Jonas! But he didn't let me finish. He moved faster than I expected for a man his age. He pivoted, shoved me sideways with surprising strength, and collided with the guard, disrupting the formation just long enough for every flashlight to tilt off target. I stumbled, nearly falling, but found my footing. "Run, Celine!" Jonas roared. And I ran. Branches whipped my arms. Gravel crunched under my boots. Shouts erupted behind me, angry, frantic. "She's moving! Cut her off! Get her!" I sprinted toward the ranger station, lungs burning, legs trembling. The old wooden steps groaned under my weight as I vaulted onto the porch. I grabbed the doorknob. Locked. "No, no, no!" Footsteps thundered behind me. I grabbed the handle with both hands and yanked. The door flew open so suddenly I nearly fell inside. A figure grabbed my arm and pulled me in. "Get down!" a voice hissed. I hit the floor as the door slammed shut. Heavy metal clicked, a deadbolt locking. My breath caught in my throat as I scrambled backward across the dusty floorboards. The room was dim, lit only by the moonlight streaming through a crack in the roof. My pulse hammered as I looked up. Standing above me was Marcy, I whispered. Her face was pale, streaked with sweat, eyes wide with urgency. "Celine, they're coming," she panted. "I heard the search teams. I ran here as soon as I could. You followed us?" "No," she said quickly. "I was already heading this way. I knew Bright Source might go after you tonight." A thud shook the door. We both flinched. "They're right outside," Marcy whispered, stepping back from the window. I saw Jonas get grabbed. My heart stopped. "What?" He slowed them down, but Celine, they took him. My stomach dropped into my knees. Jonas. Taken. The man who risked everything for me. The only one who knew the woods as well as I did. The only person who could help me navigate this nightmare. Gone. Outside, voices shouted. Flashlights sliced through the darkness, beams tracing across the windows. Marcy grabbed my arms. "We have to go, through the back hatch." "There's a hatch?" "Yes. Old maintenance crawlway under the station. It leads downslope to the river trail." Another slam hit the door, this one harder. "Open up!" a voice barked. "Now!" Marcy's grip tightened. "Celine, if they get in, they'll take everything. The folder, your phone, you." I swallowed hard, adrenaline screaming in my veins. "Follow me," she whispered. We rushed toward the back of the small cabin, past dusty shelves and a broken radio. Marcy knelt, pried up a loose floorboard, and revealed a narrow wooden tunnel descending into darkness. Flashlights swept across the front window. Voices grew louder. "I'll go first," Marcy said. "Hurry." But before she could lower herself into the hatch, a deafening crack split the air. The front door frame splintered. Screws flew. Wood snapped. The deadbolt tore free. Bright Source guards forced their way in, boots stomping, flashlights blinding. "There they are." Marcy shoved me. "Go!" I slid into the hatch, just as a guard lunged forward and grabbed her by the shoulder. "Celine, run!" Her scream echoed behind me as the floorboard slammed shut above my head. I was alone, in the dark, and Marcy had been captured. The hatch was so narrow I could barely move. My shoulders scraped wood, my knees hit every bump. and the air was thick with dust and old pine sap. Above me, the muffled chaos raged. Shouts, boots, splintering wood, Marcy's cry. Her final scream kept replaying in my ears. "Celine, run!" I crawled deeper into the tunnel, hands trembling so violently I could barely pull myself forward. Every scrape of wood felt like an accusation. She was caught because of me. She came to help me, and I left her behind. But if I went back, I'd doom us both and lose everything. The evidence, the recording, the chance to stop Bright Source. I forced myself onward. The tunnel sloped downward sharply, and loose soil crumbled under my palms. Somewhere behind me, I heard pounding, the guards trying to find the hatch. A beam of light flickered through the cracks above. I didn't look back. A few agonizing feet later, the tunnel opened into a slightly wider crawl space. Moonlight trickled through a gap in the boards. I pushed the loose panel aside and climbed out onto the forest floor, sucking in cold air like I'd been underwater. My legs almost gave out. I staggered behind a fallen tree, gasping, trying to get my bearings. The ranger station was up the slope somewhere behind me, swarmed with guards and floodlights. Marcy was in there. Jonas had been taken earlier. I was alone again. A fresh wave of fear rolled through me, but this time, something else rose with it. Something sharp, furious, unbreakable. They weren't just silencing me. They were punishing anyone who helped me, and that meant the only way to protect them now was to win. Even if I had to crawl through hell to do it, I wiped dirt off my face, clutched the folder to my chest, and forced my shaking legs to move. The woods felt heavier that night, as if every tree was holding its breath. I moved by instinct, sliding through shadows, avoiding open ground. Branches snagged my sleeves. My boots sank into soft moss. I didn't know where I was going until I arrived. The river, its roar, filled the night, steady and familiar, as if it was calling me home. I knelt beside the bank, letting the cold water wash the grime from my hands. For the first time in hours, I breathed without choking. Then my phone buzzed. I flinched, heart in my throat. The signal was weak this deep in the valley, but one message somehow squeezed through. An encrypted text from Marcy's cousin, the environmental lawyer in Seattle. Received early alert about Bright Source legal action. Very serious. Send evidence immediately. Immediately. As if it were that simple. I typed back with numb fingers. I can't use email. They're intercepting data. Need physical transfer. The reply came quickly. Can meet you halfway. Town of Ridgetop, 3 hours east, before dawn. Bring everything. I'll file emergency injunction. 3 hours. In the dark. With guards actively searching for me. But there was no choice. If we didn't file before Bright Source's morning announcement, they would win the narrative permanently. I stood, tucked the folder into my backpack, and zipped it tight. 3 hours. I could do that. I had to. I hiked upriver along a narrow game trail, letting the water guide me. The night deepened, stars flickering through gaps in the branches. My breath fogged in the cold. Every sound made me jump. Snapping twigs, distant engines, the ghost-like hoot of an owl. Then, crunch, a single footstep. Not mine. I froze. Another footstep, closer this time. I crouched behind a thick cedar trunk, heart hammering. Moonlight spilled through the trees, casting faint silver across the forest floor. I couldn't see anyone, but the steps were too deliberate to be an animal. Someone was tracking me. I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around the small pocket knife I once used for river sampling. Useless against armed guards, but better than nothing. The footsteps paused. A slow inhale, then, "Celine?" I nearly cried. The voice wasn't harsh or cold. It was frayed, desperate, familiar. "Celine, it's me." I stepped into the moonlight. And there, limping slightly, face bruised, shirt torn. "Jonas." My breath broke into shards. Jonas, oh my God, I thought they... He raised a hand, wincing. I'm okay. They tried to pin me down, but one of them got sloppy. I slipped out through the ravine trail. I rushed toward him, but he stopped me with a pained grunt. Are you hurt? I whispered. Not badly, he said, but we don't have time. His eyes sharpened as he scanned the trees. They've set up road checkpoints. Trails are being monitored. They want you contained. My stomach twisted. They took Marcy. His jaw tightened. I know. I saw them dragging someone out as I got away. They're going to use her, I whispered. To get to me. Yes, Jonas said. And to validate their injunction if they can't find you. A cold dread pulsed through me. Then I need to get to Ridgetop. A lawyer is waiting. We only have a few hours. Jonas nodded. Then we take the old channels. What channels? The backwoods logging roads. The ones no one's used in decades. They're rough, slow, and half overgrown. His voice hardened. But Bright Source doesn't know them. Hope flickered in my chest, like a candle struggling against the wind. Let's go. Jonas turned to lead the way, then stopped suddenly. I tensed. What? He held up a hand, then pointed. Downriver, far behind us, glided a slow, sweeping beam of light. Searchlights, moving deliberately, tracing the banks in our direction. My blood ran cold. They've started river sweeps, Jonas whispered. They know you'd head for the water. A moment later, the faint hum of a drone buzzed overhead. I ducked instinctively as it passed, its red sensor blinking like a hungry eye. Then another. 3 drones, fanning out over the trees. Bright Source wasn't searching anymore. They were hunting. Jonas grabbed my wrist, urgent. Move, now. We rushed along the trail, breathing hard, ducking under branches, dodging exposed roots. The searchlights grew brighter behind us. The drone hum thickened. My lungs burned. They're too close, I gasped. We're faster, Jonas grunted. But were we? Another drone swept overhead, its light slicing through branches. I dove into the shadow of a boulder just as a red beam scanned the ground where I'd been seconds before. Jonas grabbed my arm, dragging me forward. We're almost there, he whispered. Just past those rocks. There's an old logging spur. Once we hit it, they can't track us through the canopy. I forced my legs forward, heart pounding. But as we neared the rocks, a spotlight burst on directly in front of us. We both skidded to a stop. A guard stepped out from behind the boulder, radio in hand. Target located. Hart is here. My breath caught. Behind him, more lights flickered on. More footsteps. Jonas swore under his breath. We were surrounded. For a heartbeat, everything froze. The guards closed in slowly, confident, like hunters surrounding wounded prey. Their boots crushed the forest floor, flashlights slicing through the branches. Jonas stepped slightly in front of me, bracing himself like a man ready to take the blow meant for someone else. Hands where we can see them? The lead guard barked. Jonas didn't move. Neither did I, because something in me, something raw and burning, finally snapped. No, I whispered. The guard blinked. Excuse me? No, I repeated louder this time. I stepped out from behind Jonas. Celine, he hissed. Don't. But it was already too late. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't hiding. I was done letting Bright Source script my fate. You don't have the authority to detain me, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. This is public land, and you have no warrant. The guard smirked. You think that matters now? Yes, I said. It matters to the judge who'll see this. I lifted my phone, the screen glowing faintly, recording video. The guards froze. Jonas let out a breath, part relief, part fear. The lead guard laughed. Do you really think a little recording is going to stop? He stopped abruptly, because behind us, deeper in the woods, a distant siren wailed. Jonas's eyes widened. That's not Bright Source. Another siren answered it, closer. Then headlights flashed through the trees. The guard's radio buzzed sharply. We've got incoming. Local law enforcement. Repeat, law enforcement. The guard cursed under his breath. Damn it. A ripple of unease passed through the group. For the first time tonight, they looked trapped, but their leader quickly regained his composure. Take them before the cops arrive. My heart lurched. 2 guards lunged toward us. Jonas moved first, grabbing my arm and yanking me backward. We dove behind the rock outcrop as the guards closed in. Get up, Jonas hissed. My legs burned, but obeyed. We ran, again, into the trees. Voices exploded behind us. Flashlights swung wildly. Branches tore at my clothes as we sprinted into the darkness. And then, a booming voice cut through the night. This is Sheriff's Department. Step away from them. A spotlight, brighter than any bright source floodlight, sliced across the clearing. Relief broke through me so sharply I almost collapsed. But Jonas didn't slow. They're not safe either, he warned. Bright Source may have convinced some of the deputies. We can't risk waiting. He wasn't wrong. Earlier, I had seen small signs. Uniformed officers casually chatting with pipeline reps, trucks delivering supplies to the station behind the sheriff's office. The town wasn't just divided, it was compromised. We go north, Jonas said. Ridgetop is that way. So we ran again, angling away from the lights and shouts, away from the confrontation. Behind us, chaos erupted. Bright Source guards arguing with deputies shouting commands, radios crackling with overlapping orders. I didn't look back. The forest thickened. Twigs snapped under our boots, breath clouding the air. I tasted metal in my mouth, lungs burning. Jonas pushed ahead, despite his limp determination carrying him more than strength. After several grueling minutes, we reached a ridge overlooking a narrow valley. A thin fog drifted between the trees like ghosts weaving through the underbrush. Jonas pointed downhill. Logging roads that way. How much farther? 2 miles? Maybe 3. I swallowed hard. I had run more miles tonight than I had in the last 3 months combined. But adrenaline is a strange kind of fuel. We descended the ridge, sliding over loose soil and roots. My legs shook, but they held. Halfway down, something glinted in the trees below. I froze. Jonas, look. He squinted into the dark. A white SUV sat idling far below, tucked beneath the pines. Unmarked, headlights off. But inside, 2 silhouettes, waiting. Jonas murmured, "Intercept team." They predicted northbound escape. My stomach dropped. They're anticipating our moves? No, Jonas said grimly. They're anticipating your moves. He scanned the slope. We cut west. There's a ledge that leads above them. If we stay high, we can get past without being seen. We veered left, moving as quietly as possible. The forest muffled our steps, but the SUV's engine hummed softly, a constant reminder of danger waiting below. At the ledge, the path narrowed to a thin outcrop above a steep drop. My stomach twisted looking at it. We have to cross? I whispered. Jonas nodded. One at a time, slow. Stay close to the wall. The ledge was barely wider than my boots. Below it, a fall that wouldn't kill me instantly, but would stop me long enough for the team below to grab me. I placed one foot on the rock. It shifted slightly. My breath hitched. Jonas steadied me with a hand on my back. You're okay, he whispered. Focus on my voice. I nodded, moving inch by inch, hugging the stone. The trees rustled below, but the guards didn't look up. Halfway across, a loose pebble skittered off the edge, dropping into the darkness. I froze, heart pounding. One of the silhouettes below straightened. Jonas whispered urgently, "Keep going." I forced myself forward. 2 more steps. 3, 4. A distant radio crackled. Then, copy. Drone sweep shifting north. Check the ridge. My blood turned to ice. Their drones were coming here. Jonas! I whispered sharply. Drones! I know, he said. Hurry. We scrambled along the ledge. As soon as my feet hit wider ground, I collapsed onto the forest floor, shaking. Jonas helped me up. We need to move before they reach us. But before we could take a single step, a red beam pierced the canopy overhead. A drone. It hovered, too close, its sensor aiming sharply downwards. Jonas grabbed my wrist. "Run!" We bolted uphill, weaving through sharp branches. The drone tracked our movement, its light flickering through the trees. Another joined it. Then a third. I felt their heat on my back. Then a voice boomed through the drone speaker. "Celine Hart, stop running." My chest tightened. They weren't hiding anymore. They were calling me out by name. Jonas pulled me toward a rocky outcropping. "Cave! Up there!" We scrambled over boulders, my hands slipping, legs screaming. The drone beam sliced across the rocks behind us. I stumbled into a narrow crevice between two jagged stones. Jonas squeezed in right after me. The drones hovered outside, beams probing the cracks. We pressed our backs against the cold rock, holding our breath. One drone lowered. Closer. Its beam swept over our hiding place. I closed my eyes. Then, a radio voice crackled through the drone. "Negative. Thermal signature lost. Must have doubled back. Expand perimeter." The drones pulled away slowly, beams sweeping elsewhere. I didn't move. Not until Jonas whispered, "They're leaving." But the relief lasted only a moment, because footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunched somewhere above us. Not drones, not guards. Someone alone, careful, getting closer. Jonas tensed beside me. A shadow appeared overhead. A man's voice whispered, "Celine, I know you're here." "Ellie." Eli's voice seeped through the darkness like smoke. "Celine, I know you're here." Jonas tensed beside me, muscles coiled, ready to move. But he stayed silent. I pressed myself further into the stone crevice, my heartbeat so loud I was sure Eli could hear it. He stepped closer. Slow, deliberate, confident. His boots crunched the dry needles on the ground. "I admire the effort," he said softly. "Truly. Most people fold long before this point. But you keep running." I clenched my jaw. "Because you keep hunting." He continued pacing above us, his silhouette shifting through the moonlight. It felt like a predator circling a wounded animal. "You know," he said, "Bright Source wasn't sure you had enough influence to worry about. Until you came back. Until people started listening to you. Until you made them see the river as something worth fighting for." His voice lowered, a serpent's whisper. "They should have seen profit instead." A cold anger spread through my chest. Jonas's hand brushed mine subtly, a warning not to move. Eli stopped walking. Then he crouched, slowly, his face lowering toward the dark crack between the stones, toward us. I held my breath. He whispered, "You can't win. And every second you fight, more people get hurt. Marcy, Jonas, the town. All because you won't accept reality." Jonas stiffened. My throat tightened. Eli smiled, not cruelly, but with pity. Toxic, patronizing pity. "Come out, Celine. Turn yourself in. We can make this quiet, clean. You'll get a reduced penalty, and your friends will stay safe. That's what you want, isn't it?" A branch cracked somewhere behind him. He turned instantly, footsteps shifting. Jonas whispered, "Now." We moved, silent, fast, downward into the crevice. There was a narrow slit between the boulders, a blind drop I hadn't noticed before. Jonas nudged me toward it. "This way," he mouthed. "We don't know where it leads," I mouthed back. "We know where staying leads," he countered. "Fair point." He swung his legs into the narrow chute and slid. I followed, scraping elbows on the rock, trying not to yelp as sharp stone bit into my skin. Above us. "Hey!" Eli shouted. "Stop!" He'd heard us. I slid faster, gravel scraping my spine, until the chute spat us out onto a lower ledge. Jonas grabbed my arm and steadied me. We ran. Branches whipped our faces as we tore through the underbrush. Behind us, Eli's voice echoed. "Find them! They're headed toward the ridge." More voices answered, more lights, more footsteps. Jonas and I stumbled down the slope, half falling, half running. Rocks skittered under our boots, tumbling into the dark. Far below, the faint silhouette of the river shimmered. "We need to keep elevation," Jonas said breathlessly. "If we drop too low, the floodlights will catch us." "Then where?" "East Ridge. There's an old fire path, long, steep, but hidden." "Will it get us around Bright Source's perimeter?" "It'll have to." We angled east, scrambling over fallen logs. My lungs burned like fire. My legs felt like cracking wood. The weight of the evidence folder slapped against my back with every step. Behind us, shouts grew louder. "She went this way. I see movement. Cut off the slope." Fear clawed at my throat. But something else pushed harder. "Resolve." Bright Source wanted me cornered, silenced, broken. But I was still here, still moving, still fighting. We reached a steep incline covered with loose stones. Jonas grabbed my hand. "Careful. Slow steps." We climbed, feet slipping on the unstable surface. The incline rose sharply into darkness. Halfway up, a drone buzzed overhead. I froze. Jonas pulled me under a jutting rock ledge. The drone's beams swept across the slope, cutting through the trees like a blade of light. It lingered. Long. Too long. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs. Then a radio crackled through the drone's speaker. "Unit C reporting. Eli confirms visual contact on the west face. Continue search grid." The drone drifted away. Jonas exhaled shakily. "We're running out of time." He wasn't wrong. Dawn was creeping closer. If we didn't reach Ridgetop soon, the injunction would drop, the public announcement would air, and everything would be over. We continued climbing until we reached a ridgetop choked with ferns. Jonas pointed ahead. There, through that thicket. We pushed through the dense foliage and stopped cold. Below us lay a narrow ravine, a natural choke point, and at the bottom of it, a Bright Source truck, headlights off, engine idling, 3 guards, waiting. Jonas cursed under his breath. "They're guarding the fire path now," he said. "They predicted we'd try this." My stomach dropped. "There's no way around? Not without losing an hour or more." "We didn't have an hour. Not even close." I clenched my fists. "We need a distraction." Jonas hesitated. "Celine, no. They'll catch us if we do nothing." He opened his mouth, but before he could speak, something else happened. A sharp crack echoed across the ravine, a tree branch snapping. All 3 guards jerked their heads toward the sound. Then, a figure burst from the trees on the opposite side of the ravine, running, stumbling, hurt. I squinted through the shadows, and my breath ripped out of me. "Mossy," I whispered. Her hands were zip-tied, her face bruised, her clothes torn, but she was running, straight into the open. "Hey!" one guard shouted. "She escaped!" The others bolted after her. Marcy darted deeper into the trees, disappearing into darkness. Jonas grabbed my shoulder. "This is our chance. Move!" We climbed down the opposite side of the ravine and finally reached the old fire path. My chest tightened with grief and terror. "Jonas," I whispered. "They'll catch her." "She gave us this window," he said firmly. "Don't waste it." He was right. But the truth tore at my heart. We moved fast, following the narrow path as it cut through dense underbrush and curved toward the valley's far side. The air grew colder. Moonlight faded behind heavy branches. My legs shook violently. We'd been running for hours, but quitting wasn't an option. Up again, down again, over roots and rocks, through thorny brush, until the beam of a flashlight lit the path ahead. Jonas grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a fallen log. 2 more guards stepped onto the trail, scanning the forest. "They're close," one said. "If Hart comes this way, we block her." The other tapped his radio. "Copy. Drones sweeping south." Jonas looked at me, expression grim. "We can't go forward," he whispered. "Not without being seen." "So what do we do?" He pointed to the ravine next to us. A deep, shadowed drop. Jagged rocks. Cold water rushing far below. My stomach dropped. "Jonas, no. It's the only way," he said. "We scale down the ravine wall. They won't expect it, and the water will hide our trail. But it's deadly, So is staying here. Footsteps approached. The guards were moving closer. Drone lights flickered overhead. I stared at the ravine, at the jagged descent, at the rushing water, at the darkness below. This was insane, but everything depended on getting to Ridgetop. Jonas gripped my hand. I'll go first. Follow exactly where I place my feet. Don't look down. I swallowed hard, then nodded. Together, we moved toward the precipice. Just as the guard's flashlight swept over the log we were hiding behind. Hey, did you see that? Jonas whispered. Celine, go. And we stepped over the edge. We dropped. For one terrifying second, there was nothing but air and darkness, and the roar of the river swallowing the world below. My stomach lifted into my throat. Cold wind tore at my clothes. Jonas shouted something, lost in the rush of falling. Then, splash! Ice-cold water slammed into me like a fist. The current dragged me under instantly. My lungs seized, water flooding past my lips. I tumbled through the dark, hitting rocks, shoulder, thigh, ribs, each one bursting into white-hot pain. I kicked upward, my chest burning, lungs screaming, and broke the surface with a gasp that felt like ripping through glass. Celine! Jonas's voice echoed downstream. I spun in the water, waves crashing into my face. Jonas bobbed several yards from me, fighting the current, but alive. Alive. We need the bank, he shouted. I clawed toward the shore, fingers grasping at wet stones until my nails cracked. Jonas grabbed a branch and hauled himself out beside me. The river roared behind us, swallowing every trace of our fall. We collapsed onto the rocks, coughing, shivering, but breathing. Breathing. Above us, voices shouted along the ravine edge. She fell. They both fell. Check downstream? But the river had carried us far. Far enough that the searchlights couldn't reach us. Jonas turned to me, breath ragged. You okay? No, I whispered, but I'm alive. That's enough. Maybe it was, but dawn was coming. And with it, Bright Source's injunction. Everything we had left, every shred of truth, depended on reaching Ridgetop. We need to move, I said, pushing myself onto shaking legs. Jonas nodded. The old service road should be nearby. If we follow the river east, we'll hit it. So we stumbled through the forest, wet, bruised, freezing, chasing the faintest thread of hope. The sky slowly shifted from black to deep blue. Dawn. We were running out of time. It took nearly an hour of limping and climbing before we reached a rusted gate, half swallowed by vines, the entrance to a forgotten maintenance road. Jonas wiped water from his face. This leads straight to Ridgetop. How long? I asked. 30 minutes by car, 2 hours on foot. 2 hours. We didn't have 2 hours. My chest tightened. We're not going to make it. Jonas looked at me, the same calm, steady gaze he'd had every time I thought I'd break. We will, he said, because we're not alone. As if summoned by his words, headlights appeared far down the overgrown road, dim at first, then brighter. A car heading toward us. Jonas pulled me behind a tree. Stay back. The car slowed, then stopped right in front of the gate. The engine shut off. Then I heard the voice. Celine? Jonas? Please tell me that's you. I stepped out from behind the tree, trembling, soaked, shaking, and saw her. Marcy. Alive. Filthy. Barefoot, but alive. My vision blurred. Marcy, how? She ran toward me, tears streaking through the dirt on her face. I broke the zip ties on a sharp rock, she panted. I ran until I lost them. I saw the drones shift east, so I circled wide and came here. I knew this was your only shot. Emotion punched me in the chest so hard I almost collapsed. You saved us, I whispered. No, she said, gripping my shoulders. We saved the river. She turned and opened the back door of the car. Inside, a man in a button-down shirt sat with a laptop open, papers spread across his lap. Marcy's cousin, environmental lawyer, our last hope. He looked up, wide-eyed. You're Celine? Holy hell. You look like you crawled out of a war zone. Feels accurate, I croaked. Did you bring the filings? He tapped the laptop. Drafted and ready. I just need your evidence. If everything checks out, we can submit before BrightSource's announcement. My backpack was soaked. My clothes were soaked. But the folder, I unzipped the bag with trembling hands. Miraculously, the folder was intact. Water had warped the edges, but the contents were legible. The recording was backed up on my phone. The printed logs were smudged, but readable. I handed the whole pack to the lawyer. He flipped through quickly, face hardening with every page. This is worse than what Marcy described, he whispered. This isn't just illegal. This is criminal conspiracy. Can you work with it? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Yes, get in, all of you. We're filing this now. We piled into the car. Jonas in front, Marcy and I in the back, shivering under a blanket she found in the trunk. The car jolted forward, bouncing over potholes as we sped toward Ridgetop. 10 minutes? 20? 30? My hands shook the whole time. Fear, adrenaline, exhaustion, all tangled together. Signal's up, the lawyer said suddenly. I can file from here. He hit send. A tiny whoosh. A simple sound. But it felt like a detonator. It's submitted, he said. My breath caught. We'd done it. Jonas squeezed my shoulder. Marcy gripped my hand. We weren't finished, but we were no longer fighting in the dark. When we reached Ridgetop's courthouse parking lot, the sun was rising, soft gold filtering through the pines. People stood clustered around the entrance. Local journalists, activists from nearby towns, a few familiar faces from Willow Run. News traveled fast. As soon as I stepped out of the car, cameras turned. Celine, did BrightSource really target you? What happened last night? Did they detain your team? Are the allegations true? For the first time in days. I didn't feel fear. Not with the evidence filed, not with the sun rising, not with Marcy and Jonas beside me. I raised my voice. BrightSource didn't just try to build an illegal pipeline. They tried to destroy anyone who stood in their way. And last night, my voice cracked. I steadied myself. Last night, we got the proof. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A journalist asked, "What happens now?" The lawyer stepped forward. The judge has issued a temporary injunction. BrightSource is barred from any further action until a full investigation is complete. It hit me like a wave. We won time. Precious, legal, powerful time. Jonas exhaled deeply. Marcy wiped her eyes. But then a shout came from the courthouse steps. A deputy jogged toward us, face pale. "You're Celine Hart?" he asked. "Yes." He swallowed hard. "Eli Stanton. He just turned himself in." My breath stopped. "What?" He brought documents. Said he needed to confess before BrightSource pinned it on him. Said he couldn't keep running. A stunned hush fell around us. Eli turned himself in. The man who hunted me. Betrayed the town. Nearly destroyed everything. "Why?" The deputy added quietly. "He said you weren't wrong. And he wanted the truth out before BrightSource silenced him too." The world tilted. Jonas put an arm around me as my knees weakened. Marcy steadied my other side. For the first time since this nightmare started, the walls BrightSource built were cracking from the inside. And that was the beginning of the end.